everyone, welcome to the channel. If you're new, my name is Sal, and this is my sort of coloring demo. This is the first time that I'm showing this in my channel, and this is just to show you how I finish my pages, how I color my pages, and how I use different coloring mediums. So for this one, this page is from Matchstick Mouse, a summer coloring book. And what I did with this is I used watercolors. I find that watercolors actually work really well on this book, even though it's Amazon paper. It's really weird because when I used watercolors on Minimania 2, which is the same paper supposedly, it really didn't work at all because the paper would turn dark gray, so I couldn't see the colors that I was putting on. When the paper was wet, it would become dark, so I couldn't see the color that I was working on. I mean the color that I was putting on. And then when it dried, the colors were really unsaturated and flat looking. So I was surprised that watercolors work on this paper, and this isn't the first page that I've used watercolors, so that's how I know that it works. So this is my second page actually. And I'll show everything in my September/October completed pages. I just wanted to show you how I work on my pages, so in case you pick up a thing or two, if you have the same coloring mediums as I do have some cool techniques that I wanted to share. So here I already finished, I won't say basing because I really colored it with watercolor. My intention was just to color it with watercolor without any pencils on top. So I finished putting on watercolors on the main image on the circle, and then I decided to draw more, kind of to extend the illustration around the rest of the page, sort of like a background. And because it's very childlike and whimsical, the illustration, I wanted the rest of the background to be the same, childlike and sweet and whimsical as well. So I drew the background with pencil, with an HB pencil, and then with an H pencil, sorry, and then colored it with actually the ink tents. I think I used ink tents. I used ink tents to color the initial sketch, and when it dried, it was lighter than I wanted it to be. So right now I am going in with some acrylic markers just to darken some areas, or to create shadows, or to create more contrast. I do like the watercolor effect of ink tents. It's just that I wanted it to be more vibrant. So I'm using any acrylic markers. I have the AT set, and I'm actually pretty happy with that set because it's inexpensive, and at the same time it's the amount of colors. 80 is just right for me because anything more than that makes me crazy with swatching. And I like that it has a carrying case, so it's always has place. Everything has its place, I mean, and it's easy for me to pick up the color, the pens, because I know exactly the color that I'm gonna get, because it I made swatches on the set itself. So maybe I'll show you sometime when I show you my art supply coloring supplies haul. So yeah, it's really hard to color shells because the color is something like off-white, but also a bit grayish. So that's what I was trying to achieve here, although I really wasn't able to get the exact color. And I'm just using a damp brush to spread the acrylic paint around from the acrylic marker. So my technique in using acrylic markers is lifting the paint from directly from the marker, then also applying it directly on paper, and then to blend I use a damp brush to blend. If you have a water brush, of course you can use that. It's just that I'm more used to using actual brushes. And now I'm gonna show you how I use watercolor to color my mouse. So I already colored the sky, and I left my mouse uncolored because I wasn't sure where my highlight was going. And so I decided to put the sun directly behind my mouse. So this is kind of like a sunset situation. So the sun is behind my mouse, so I already put a yellow color on the edge of my mouse, including the hat. So now I'm using watercolor to fill in the rest of the mouse. And I discovered this in the previous page that I worked on this book, that my favorite way to color the mouse is actually using stippling motion to imitate fur. So instead of coloring the mouse solid, I suggest to use a stippling motion to imitate fur, and this will work with whatever medium that you're using. So I start with my medium color. I just wanted to establish the color of the mouse before I put in my shadows and my highlights. So now I'm using I think I mixed some purple with my browns to put in the shadows. So you're going to see that I'm just building up the color of the mouse, and in the end the mouse will look like reddish, pinkish, brownish mouse, which is and very yellowy, which is like a vintage cartoony mouse look. I'm speeding up the coloring of my mouse. So here I've added a bit of purple for the shadowed areas, and then you'll also see that I colored the ears pink, like magenta, and also for the hands, and if the mouse had feet, I would also put a bit of magenta shadows. And then for the tail is pink with magenta shadows. So I think this is a mix of magenta and brown. So the beauty about using watercolors is that you only need a few colors, and then you can mix it, and then you have a totally different color. But at the same time, it's still within your color palette, so the entire image is cohesive because you're using the same colors you're just mixing them to create new colors, so you don't have to worry about too many colors in your page. They're all just very cohesive. For his hat, her hat, I decided to make it into a straw hat, the color of a straw hat. So it's greenish, yellowish, olive colored. So again, speeding this up to just to finish this coloring page. I colored the shells also last, the shells that he or she is holding, and just to make sure that the colors don't clash or blend too well into the mouse color. So that's why I left it at the end. Now we're moving on to another page that I worked on in September. This one is from the book Romantic Country by Erie. This is tale number 2, and I colored this with Prismacolors, and Prismacolor colored pencils work really well on this paper. But I made a mistake with the background on the center illustration. So if you can see, my initial idea was like a gradient from blue to kind of a tealish center, but I wasn't liking how it turned out. It was very patchy and just uneven, and I just didn't like how it ended up looking. So I'm trying to correct it with acrylic markers. So at this point, I have kind of a vague idea of how I want this to look, and I'm just trying the acrylic markers, knowing that if this fails, my last option would be gouache. So if you have acrylic markers, that's really a plus because you can afford to make mistakes. Acrylic markers can fix anything. It can cover anything, any mistake. And dark acrylic markers are more opaque than light acrylic markers. So you can see that it's very easy for me to cover the pencil work that I've done underneath on this page. And I'm going to speed up the process and show you how I covered the entire central illustration with acrylic markers. So the idea is it's nighttime. Obviously there's moon and stars, so I'm going to make it darker than it originally was, and then I'm trying to create a spotlight. So like this is the stage, and then there's spotlight in the middle for the two dancers or the two puppets. So there's yellow there, and then to transition between the dark blue to yellow spotlight, I need something in between, so I decided on purple. So my challenge is how do I gradually transition the purple to the blue and also make the spotlight lights more realistic and smooth, like yellow to purple to blue. So that was my challenge. So I think I was able to do it. What I did was I kept the sparkles. I think these are stars, maybe, or sparkles. um, I kept them white. I made like a circle around them and kept it white, and then just played with different kinds of different hues and values of blue and purple to make a smooth gradient between the two colors and to make a convincing night background. Well, fantasy night background in the theater. So now that I've completed the colors, I'm trying to smooth out the transition between the colors with a wet brush, with a damp brush. So you can see that I'm lifting the color, the paint from the acrylic marker with a brush and then applying it on the paper. That's one way to create a smoother gradient or a smoother blend between colors. And I'm trying to put dark blue in between the kind of tassels on the curtain using a brush. Now I'm working on the lights, the sparkles, and I'm using acrylic markers again. So I just colored the surrounding globe or circle with a darker yellow and then a very light yellow in the middle for the spotlight. And I'm trying to keep the ratio between the light spotlight yellow and the halo darker yellow glow around the spotlight, kind of a 50-50 or 40-60 ratio, with the spotlight being smaller than the glow around it. When that was done, I'm now putting back the purple around the halo because in my mind that was the transition color to the blue. So yellow to purple to blue, because blue should be my darkest value, darkest color. So I'm trying to put back the and also reshape the circle because some circles became distorted from how I colored it with the yellow marker. Now I'm using gouache. It's called titanium white, and I'm putting it in the middle of the spotlight. So there was already a light yellow in the center of this halo glow, but I wanted it to stand out more. So I'm putting actual white at the very center. And then reinforcing the surrounding halo with a darker yellow again with gouache. So the gouache is actually more vibrant and opaque than the acrylic marker. And the beauty about putting gouache over the acrylic marker is that you already have a base. So when you put on the gouache on top of the marker, you only need a very small amount of paint because you already have the base there. So you're not using a lot of paint. Now I'm adding white gouache also to the spotlight at the center stage, just to brighten it a little bit more. And then I'm going to use gouache again to create a better transition between the spotlight and the purple background. So when yellow and purple interact or mix together, it creates kind of a pinkish color, pinkish halo. So instead of this light bluish purple that or blue violet that I added initially using acrylic marker, I'm going over that with gouache in kind of a more pinkish purple magenta color, which is a more convincing color for the edge of the spotlight, where it kind of diffuses into the background. This is a painful process, so I'm just going to skip over the whole thing and just show you the end result. So after several coats of the gouache, so I realized that I needed to add white to the gouache. It can't be just magenta and a little bit of purple. I needed to add white because I'm dealing with a light source. So to diffuse the color and blend it better, white really helps, especially with gouache. So this is the finished product, the finished painful process of that spotlight edge, and I'm going to now try to match the rest of the background with that same magenta purple hue, because the spotlight is in the middle and it should also be like on the center of the page vertically, right? It can't be just on the floor. It should be like spotlighting them vertically from the top. So the background should be kind of the same color. So that's what I'm trying to do. I really struggled with making the background even. Remember, I already put colored pencil, and then on top I had put acrylic marker, and now I'm putting on gouache on top. So I'm just lucky that this paper is amazing, that it was able to withstand all of that, layers upon layers of different medium or media. But in the end, I promise you, this turned out really, really good. And I'm really proud of how this page turned out. I'm not able to show you in this video, but I will show it in my September-October completed pages. And it's one of the pages that turned out really amazingly. And so, yeah, you can see how the gouache worked really nicely over the acrylic marker, and how the paper really held up well to this wet medium. I think there was a point where the gouache was not blending well with the acrylic marker, there was some kind of reaction. So I tried to lift. So here, see, I'm lifting some of the gouache paint and keeping it more bluish again, removing some of the magenta, purple colors that I had put in just a few seconds ago, because it wasn't laying on top of the acrylic marker well. Now I'm coloring the image, I mean the illustration itself, the characters, the puppets, and I'm using acrylic markers. One of the things that I'm really proud of about how I colored this page is the ballerina dress. So I was torn between blue and pink, but in the end I went with blue and teal. So that combination just came to me out of the blue as I was coloring, and I think it really made an impact on the cohesiveness of the entire page. And then I also covered all the black lines on the ballerina's dress and shoes with acrylic markers, and that helped create the ethereal effect on the dress. So I think I can really feel the texture of the tulle and the fullness of the skirt because of the lack of the black lines. I colored the rest of these puppets and the rest of the page with acrylic markers. You'll see it in my completed pages. I wasn't able to film it because my camera battery died at this point, so I really apologize, but I hope that you got something from this mistake and trying to correct this mistake. So the way that I correct most of my pages when I don't like it or make a mistake is with acrylic markers and gouache. It used to be just gouache, but when I bought acrylic markers, it really was a game changer, and now I feel more confident because I know that if I screw up, I can always fix it with acrylic markers. Not that, you know, some pages are beyond rescuing, but fortunately that hasn't happened to me yet. There's always a way to rescue a page. Now let's go to another book, A Million Magical Creatures. You know that every month I color a page or two from this book. I really wanted to color something on this book in September, but I think I wasn't able to. But I wanted to color something with a rainbow because rainbows have a very significant meaning for me. And I was going to film this as a color with me as a tutorial, but I think because of how many times I screwed up, I think you'll just get confused. So I'm just including this in my coloring demo and hope that you can learn a few tips and tricks with your coloring supplies. So to me, this looks like a European city, and so the first thing that came to my mind is to use my eye crayon Europe color palette, and this is the budget version of Caran d'Ache Neo Colors 2, and I really like it for architecture, especially European architecture, because the colors are perfect. The color palette is perfect, bang on perfect. So I'm starting with light gray, a warm light gray for the facade of the building. You'll see me use yellowy grayish colors on the buildings itself. And then for the rooftops, I imagine that it has reddish orange roofs. And at first, I was going to color all of the rooftops a uniform color of reddish orange, but I decided to look up reference images and found out that okay, some rooftops are actually kind of dark blue, some are more like iron, some are like greenish, like greenish blue. So I I tried to correct the colors, but so if you were to follow my coloring of this page, I'm going to tell you that the tower in the middle, the triangular sharp triangle shaped roofs, towers in the middle of the image, those would be colored dark bluish gray. So don't follow my red orange coloring for that. So you can see that there's like a yellow crayon scribble on the cat. That don't just ignore that. That was my daughter. She had messed up this page with a highlighter, but thankfully I was able to cover it up somewhat. So yeah, I'm just going to show you how I colored all the buildings with my crayon. Some buildings I colored with light blue, and for the building that's farthest from our view, like going out of our perspective, I colored it a light blue as well. So now that my buildings are colored, I'm activating the crayon with water. And you'll see that when I activated it with water, it became less vibrant. It became the colors, the pigment became less saturated. So, but that's okay because my plan was to put down really light colors and build it up as I went on, because I wasn't sure how light or dark I wanted this page to be. I wasn't sure yet what my darkest would be, so I wanted to have some room to build up colors if I wanted to. I colored the sidewalk and the street gray. So at first, I colored it with a light gray. In hindsight, I think maybe I should have kept it this light because sometimes when uh, the sun hits the ground, it almost looks white. But my idea is that this is a, a cloudy day. So you know when it rains and then there's a dark cloud after the rain, and then somewhere there's a rainbow, and that's the only bright spot in the sky. So like before the sun fully comes out after the rain. That's my concept for this spread. So that's why I'm darkening some areas where I know that the sunlight or the light from the sky is not yet fully hitting. Like this corner here that is behind the sky. So on the left side, I imagine that it's the darker, cloudier side because of the grayish, cloudy sky. And then on the right side is where it's brighter because that's where the rainbow is. And at this point, I removed my spread from the rest of the book because it was already detached in the first place. So it will help me not to damage the page under this page with my coloring. I never put a protective layer between my pages because I don't use mediums that bleed, but I do make mistakes of like accidentally putting colors on the edges of my pages to the next pages. So but since I work with gouache, and I already mentioned that it's easy to correct anything with gouache, cover anything with gouache and acrylic markers, I'm not too worried about that. This is the next day. I let the entire thing dry, and I didn't show it on camera, but I did add a bluish layer also of eye crayon on the street, not on the sidewalk, but just on the main street, because I imagine that the street is kind of more of a bluish asphalt than the sidewalk. So now I'm using Prismacolors to darken my buildings. Unfortunately, if you use eye crayons, this is as dark as it goes if you activate it with water. And also, I had only used like a light hand when I colored with eye crayons. I think maybe if you do layers upon layers, maybe it will be darker than this. So yeah, just deepening the colors with Prismacolors. I'm using a light yellow color for the facade of the buildings, and I also didn't show on camera that I had corrected some of my buildings with a dark blue gray roof, which, as you can see from here, it didn't look very nice, but that's okay. That's going to be corrected later. Trust the process, right? So what I want for the building facades is they're not purely yellow, so their light is bouncing off of each other. They're reflecting each other. So some buildings are more pale pink. Some buildings are more cream yellow, and so I'm just mixing all of those colors, like mixing peach and yellow and maybe even light orange on the building facades to make them look more realistic. Right now, I'm not worried about adding shadows to my buildings, so that will come later on. Now I'm coloring the roofs. So I mentioned that I wanted it to be red orange, so I am darkening the red orange roofs with Prismacolors and just making it more intense. Now I'm using blue color. This is the same shade that I'm using for the roofs of the dark blue roofs. For cohesiveness, I'm using the same shade of blue for some of the windows for contrast. Then also same blue for the windows, and then I'm using brown for the rest of the windows on this main building here, like a dark brown. This is another day, and looking at it with fresh eyes. Now I'm going to work on the sky. So I'm choosing my colors with using eye crayons again, because I decided that I should make the grays consistent. So the grays that I used for the ground should be the same grays that I used for the sky. So now I'm picking colors of dark grays to light grays and of course blues. As always, I start with the lightest value, which is the light blue sky. I know that I want the sky around or below the rainbow to be lighter than the rest of the sky, because that's where, you know, the sun is coming out from. And then I'm coloring the other side of the rainbow with a darker blue with a hint of gray or black. Now the advantage of eye crayon or using a crayon, water-soluble crayon for coloring books with larger areas like the sky is that it's very easy and very fast. You can cover a lot of area in just a few seconds. So I'm coloring this with dark blue, and then upwards it would be the dark gray clouds, the rain clouds that are gonna go away. Now I'm activating the colors with water to blend it out and remove the crayon strokes. When I activate it with water, the color becomes lighter, so it's good as a base, but I know that I'm going to have to put something on top of this to really make it more visible. One tip that I have when working with water-soluble crayons or Inktense is that, or even Neo colors too, is that you work from light to dark instead of dark to light, in order not to contaminate your light with darker colors. I think that makes sense, right? So I always start activating my light colors. So now here I'm transitioning from dark blue to gray. So I start with the lighter one, which is the dark blue, and I even turn my page around upside down, so I start with the lighter color, blending out towards the darker color, so I don't contaminate my blue with gray. Now, if this was a tutorial, you would be following this, right? So in fact, later on, I'm going to scrap this whole thing and cover it all with acrylic marker. I'm talking about the sky. So, and this is why making this into a color with me is going to be very confusing. So I'm just going to show it as a coloring demo. I left it to dry, and when everything was dry, I am now going to color in the rainbows, and I'm going to use these kids silky crayons. I'm not going to call them gel crayons because they're not actually gel crayons. They are actual crayons that work as like oil pastels. They're water soluble and you can spread them with your finger. They're really nice, and there are 48 colors in this set. Very inexpensive, and I really love working on them. I mean, working with them on Lulumayo pages. So I thought that it would be fun to show you how I color with them on this book, on this page. And so I chose the colors of the rainbow, but again, this is just a demo of how I use these kids crayons to color, but don't follow because I will completely color over this later with acrylic markers. These crayons work or feel like these crayons feel like coloring with butter. They're very, very soft and creamy, and they blend beautifully with each other. And so I'm able to create seamless rainbow transitions with my selected colors. The only reason why I will cover this with acrylic marker in the end is because I find that in reality rainbows are not this intense and vibrant, and you can't really see all of these all of these colors in real life. You only see 3 or 4 hues. So I wanted it to be lighter and more pastel colors, and that's the only reason why I'm going to cover this up in the end. And I also wanted to cover the black lines, so acrylic marker does a great job of that. Another demonstration of these kids crayons is coloring this sky with the crayons. I'm going to activate this with water to cover the rest of the sky. Now I have my grays, and I will cover the other half of the sky with my dark cloudy gray sky. These crayons are also great for layering on top of each other. Because I only have 48 colors, sometimes there are shades that are not available on with these crayons, so I tend to layer them on top of each other. However, the problem with that is there's too much wax buildup. These are waxy crayons, and so in the end, I think they repel other paints. For example, I tried to use gouache on top of this, but it was repelling the gouache, so I had to use acrylic markers to cover it up. And the reason why I covered up the sky in the end is because I had made it too dark. I intended it to be a cloudy gray sky, and I achieved it, but I didn't like how realistic it looked. It was too realistic for this fantastical illustration. So in order to keep the childlike feel, I decided to remove too much gray in the colors. Using a facial tissue, you can use this to spread the color like oil pastel. And this is again just a demo and a trick and a tip for you if ever you want to use these kids crayons too. This is another day, and this is where we're at. Now I finished coloring the clouds. If you notice, I didn't like it at all. So again, I'm going to change that later. Now I'm going to color the cat. I decided to make it into a ginger cat. Again, I'm going to use my kids crayons for this. And now using some browns, I'm going to color the stripes on the cat. I wasn't sure what shade of brown should be the stripes, so I'm just trying to experiment here. Using my brush, a damp brush, I use that to spread the brown on the stripes, because I found that created a more subtle stripe color than putting the crayon directly on paper. It was and leaving it like that, it was very solid, and so spreading it around with the brush had a nicer effect in the end. I have to be honest with you, up to this point, I didn't really have a plan on how I'm going to finish this spread. All I knew is that I wanted to put certain colors in certain areas, and that's just how I attacked it. Just, oh, this needs to be yellow, this needs to be red, this needs to be a circus, so it's red and blue. So that's how I attack this spread. Here I tried to use the color theory, so I put in purple for the shadow and then going to put dark red on top. So one technique that I wanted to share with you is to color the dark and the light, and then leave the white space in between. And then when you activate the medium with water with a damp brush, then you can blend over the light area, and then you got your highlight. And now I'm showing you how I deepen the shadows on the buildings using gouache. So this is a very light wash of gouache, almost like watercolor. So lots of water and little pigment. I'm using yellow ochre to darken the to create shadows on the building facades. This is the best part of coloring architecture, is making the dimensions. So because I had based this already with the eye crayon and also the colored pencils, I don't want to add any more color to this except just to darken my shadows. I decided to add a diagonal shadow on this part, as if a building was shading it and there was a diagonal shadow, and that just adds to the realism of the architecture. Now I'm adding shadows to the ground for the cars. It seems like a small detail, but that makes all the difference in an illustration. Another small detail is that I used white gouache to create tiles on the sidewalk. I decided that it's too plain to leave it just gray, so I used white gouache to create rectangular tiles, and now I'm using a detail brush to create definition for those tiles. Here I already finished the creatures on the flying magic carpet, and I'm sort of burning out because this is such a huge spread and there's so many little elements that I'm running out of ideas on how to color them. And so I'm using my water-based pastel markers to just lay down whatever color that comes to mind. Of course, still sticking to the color palette, but really I'm a bit burnt out at this point. Okay, so I had a second wind, and then somehow in the middle of the night I just woke up and I decided to finish this page, and I reached for my acrylic markers to just finish it off, and I just had a burst of inspiration. So you can see that I covered the areas with acrylic markers, the sky, the rainbow, like I said, and also some areas I covered with acrylic markers, like the creatures. I covered the dark lines, recolored them with pastel colors, and same with the cat, make it to make it more magical and stand out from the rest of the illustration. Even the little creatures on the buildings, like peeking from the windows and all around the buildings, I recolored those with acrylic markers. I also colored the cars and the little people with colorful acrylic markers rather than leave them black. And here I'm showing you how I created a magical effect on the flying carpet, because it looked kind of boring just floating there, like it was weird and out of place. So I wanted to add a magical element to this picture. Without this effect that I'm going to do, it looks kind of just weird. Without it, it didn't have any wow effect. It didn't have anything magical about it. So I decided to go the extra mile and use my sparkling watercolors, glitter watercolors, to add some jazz to this page. So using gouache, I diluted it with water. Again, this is the same titanium gouache that I've been using throughout the page, and I just diluted it with water and spreading it on the around the edge of the magic carpet. And I forgot to mention that I used water-based markers to, or is this maybe acrylic markers. I had put like little dots around the magic carpet to for some glitter effect, but it didn't pop out. It didn't pop. So I'm putting in the white gouache to make like a halo glowy effect around the carpet. And then when I'm happy with the amount of glow that I got, you can also not use white. You can use yellow, light yellow, but make sure to mix it with white, because that's where the glow will really come out. Now I'm using my very cheap watercolors, glitter watercolors from Temu, to add some magical sparkles to this picture. The colors that I chose are the color changing whites on the top row. So these are like white pearlescent watercolors that change color when light hits it. I used the yellow, greenish, and pinkish glitters. You can't see it because it's very bright, but when I was doing this, it was cloudy, and so my desk was quite dark, and I could really see the sparkles and the pearlescent colors shining through on my paper. Added some sparkles, some gold sparkles at the end, at the tail end of the carpet, the carpet glitters, which you will be able to see when I tilt the page again. And also, I decided to add some sparkles on the creatures riding the magic carpet, because why not? And in the end, I also added sparkles on the cat, to just to emphasize that it's the magical creature. It's a magical creature as well. And I almost put sparkles on the rainbow, but I decided to hold off on that because I wanted my creatures to be the main focus, and just the magical creatures. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It's my longest video ever. Um, there were a lot of things that I wanted to show you, and I hope that you're able to pick up a thing or two and learn about how I complete my pages. As you can see, one page takes me a few days because I always like try to get fresh eyes when I work on a page, and I can only work on a page a few hours a day, and I don't force myself to finish everything all at once. So that's why on my completed pages video, I only finish 6 or 7, sometimes 8, because I really try to make a masterpiece of each of my coloring page. Not that there's anything wrong with just coloring and, you know, enjoying it for what it is, but this is my reason for coloring is partly to get better at art and to practice my painting skills, my art skills. So that is why I use my wet medium. And anyway, thanks so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions, or if there are any techniques that you'd want me to share. And yeah, see you in the next video. Please like and